Episode 1248 of The Sleeper and the Bust. I am Justin Mason, joined as always on Sunday by Jason Collette. How you doing, my friend?
If I look cold, I am cold. As I was telling you off air, woke up to 15 degrees this morning here in Metro Charlotte, and so I have my my RotoWire. What do they call it? Beanie, whatever you want to call these things. Thanks, Kenny.
The beanie,
I love this thing. Yes,
right.
have that and have a nice fleece shirt on. But trying to stay warm here so we can continue podcasting. So this should definitely help, man. How you been?
I'm doing all right. We're in the middle of a rainstorm, so if we have any audio issues, I apologize on the front end of the podcast. Hopefully things seem to have calmed down for a brief moment right now. So, but hopefully we don't have any internet issues. But yeah, try to stay dry. Anytime I think like, oh man, I'd love to move out of California and go somewhere else. Then people start saying things like 15 degrees. And I go, no way. I can't handle that anymore.
Well, it's, the good news is it's only here. It's supposed to be in the 60s later this week. I mean, go figure. So it's kind of all over the place. That's what I've learned about my 10 years in North Carolina. The weather can go anywhere and everywhere. But it also means as it's getting warmer, that means we're getting closer to spring training. And we are like, 10 days away from stuff reporting now? I saw some camp reporting dates the other day, and I was like 32 days until games start. But then teams are starting to report I think in 18, 19 days from now, teams are starting to report.
Yeah, we got to get these last big signings out of the way. We did get a big signing over the weekend. Josh Hader signs a 5-year deal. I believe it's the largest deal for a relief pitcher ever.
Guaranteed money, yes.
Yeah, to go to the Houston Astros. Not on my bingo card. I think this is a massive deal. It obviously shakes up the landscape. So if you are like me and have drafted Ryan Presley, you may be a little SOL in your league, in a couple of your leagues already. Jason, what are your thoughts on Josh Hader going to the Astros?
My thoughts were this became, like you said, this wasn't on your bingo card. But when the news came out last week that they had lost Kendall Graveman for the year, Kendall Graveman needed to have shoulder surgery. He's out for the year. And remember, they lost Hector Neris to free agency. He was gone for the year. He's gone, and they could bring him back. But how often do you see free agents sign with your own team, right? So they lost some pieces from their bullpen. They also lost looking through Ryan Stanek. So, I mean, their bullpen had gone through some attrition. And they needed to find somebody. Now, that said, I am surprised they went and ponied up this. I mean, the difference between this and if you're listening, you're saying, oh, wait, Edwin Diaz signed this contract. Well, Edwin Diaz had some of his money deferred, whereas Hader has all of this. Oh, and it's no trade clause. Like, he's in Houston for 5 years, period, end of sentence with this. And so it's definitely a good thing. I mean, when you look at it, I had messaged this out earlier this week for Astros fans that missed the days of Billy Wagner. You just got, the taller, longer hair version of Billy Wagner. You look at the career numbers. I'm looking at this right now. Billy Wagner over his career struck out 33.2% of the hitters he faced, held them to a 184 average and had a 227 Sierra for his entire career. Josh Hader has struck out 42.2% of his batters, has held batters to a 155 average, and has the same 227 Sierra over his career. It's almost a full circle thing because remember, Josh Hader was drafted by the Orioles, and the Orioles traded him along with L.J. Hose to a rebuilding Houston club for Bud Norris back in 2013. So now Hader has come full circle. Back then, he was a starter in the Houston organization. Then he got thrown into the deal to Milwaukee, and I'm drawing a complete blank on who that part of the deal was. But when he got to Milwaukee, I think they first started him as a starter, and they were like, "Nah, dude, you're going to be in the bullpen." So this is a tremendous, as long as you're not a Ryan Presley fantasy manager, this is a tremendous move for the baseball team and for the fantasy marketplace because if you're in an AL only league, there's been a lot of pitching that's gone the other direction. And so we see a big name come back this way that we can get into draft plan. But there's been a lot of pitchers that have moved the other direction. And as somebody who plays in two AL only industry leagues and then an AL only home league, been kind of rough to watch the talent go the other way this winter. Like, damn, what are we going to be drafting?
Yeah, I mean, obviously this changes a massive amount of value for Ryan Presley. He's no longer draftable in most formats. It's a bummer for me because I drafted Presley and I think 2 DCs already. So, and those DCs, there's no pickup, so it's not like I can go and replace them. But is what it is. To me, the really interesting fallout is I know I was pegging Josh Hader to end up in Texas, but with the Rangers, not with the Astros. So not only does this now, Steele, who I think a lot of people thought was going to be their premier pickup this offseason for the Rangers, it also kind of opens up their bullpen, because I think a lot of people were staying away from Jose Leclerc and other guys in that Rangers bullpen with the idea that, Josh Hader will be coming to town at some point. So I'll be interested to see how much we see the rise of Jose Leclerc.
I'm glad you brought up that. So there was a couple of things, with the Houston thing. I would also be remiss if I didn't mention this would be the end of the Brian Abreu speculations too. I mean, a lot of people, Brian Abreu was going 260 over the last month. So people were thinking, hey, maybe there's something there. That's his is going to come way down. The Hader not going to Texas, the team, not the state, but to me, that speaks to the whole issue with the broadcast rights. Texas really hasn't. Yes, they won the World Series. It's kind of weird to see a team win the World Series and not do anything yet, but they're still waiting to see what's going to happen with their media rights. And so that's probably what took them out of this conversation. That said, as somebody who does have Jose Leclerc, I'm happy. I have not drafted yet, but Jose Leclerc is somebody. The overall numbers, I know you're like, ew. Go back and look at the progress he made month over month, and by the end of the season, Jose Leclerc looked like vintage Jose Leclerc. And so I'm willing to give him another chance, and that's probably the same spin that the Rangers front office is going to say. We didn't need Hader. We have Leclerc. Look what Leclerc did August, September, October as he took us to the championship. Yeah, he gave up a couple of home runs to Jose Altuve. Who hasn't with that? So that's how I see this. But this whole media rights uncertainty is certainly that looming dark cloud that's been hanging over. And this may have been the first time where it's been a team that needed something. Maybe we thought this is where he's going, and then he didn't, because that uncertainty is hanging around.
Yeah. So Jose Leclerc's ADP is going to shoot up through the roof. I think you're going to start seeing him. He's been going over since Christmas. He's been 195. Going 195. I expect him to jump up to the 160, 150-ish range.
And that would put him, as far as closers, that's going to leapfrog him over Alex Lang, which he already should be.
Yeah.
It's going to leapfrog him over Jose Alvarado, which maybe he already should be. That's going to leapfrog him over. And that's really it. That's kind of where that market, I'm looking at everybody else in that pocket in the 140 and on is a starting pitcher.
Is there a chance that he jumps up to the next closer, which would be Adbert Alzolay at about 120?
I don't think so.
Okay. So he's kind of going to be in a tier on his own, probably in the 150 to 160-ish range.
Maybe he's this year's David Bednar, where he's kind of like your drop. Remember Bednar? Everybody was looking at Bednar, and that was more team context than anything, but kind of Bednar was like the guy, like, okay, I guess. And then he had a phenomenal season.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I had a lot of Bednar last year. He was fantastic.
Maybe that's why he won.
Could be. I do wonder if the Rangers now pivot back to like a Chapman. Like, do they go get Aroldis Chapman, bring him back? He pitched well for them, and kind of strengthen the bullpen that way. Remains to be seen. Obviously, we just need teams to start signing guys so we have a better idea. Another signing that did happen though is Robert Stevenson signs a deal to go to the Angels. I've drafted a fair amount of Carlos Estevez in early drafts because he's been going so freaking cheap. And to me, he was kind of the unquestioned guy in that bullpen. Well, silly me, and not looking at my crystal ball. Robert Stevenson come to town, coming off a fantastic season. Do you think Stevenson is now the closer?
Jason Martinez at least has him as a co-closer. I was looking at the depth charts when this happened. So when you look at, some of the factors here in play. Robert Stevenson's from California. He's from Martinez. So maybe the desire for him to go back home is in play here. Carlos Estevez is a free agent after this season. So the opportunity is there for Stevenson to assume the closing role after that. The fact is his average annual value is coming in at $11 million, and there's a 4th-year option on this deal. They're paying him like a closer. So all the arrows seem to indicate that direction. And I was a big advocate for Carlos Estevez last year, given his market price. Took him in a few places last year. I know that the RotoWire OC winner, Drew Forte, took Estevez, and he was on his winning team last year. So there was a lot of winning teams that had Estevez because of the market price, that type of situation. That said, he did fade off as the season went on. There are some issues with walks with him. Stevenson, you look at you got to separate the Pittsburgh version of Stevenson from the Tampa Bay version of Stevenson. The Tampa Bay version was simply unhittable. The guy was amazing. They basically said, hey, come in here, throw more of that cutter, and just gas it out. And they made a couple of tweaks, and he was unbelievable. He just never got the option to close, but he was unbelievable in that bullpen. The fan in me will sorely miss him being in that bullpen. I'd like to see who the next Robert Stevenson is going to be in Tampa Bay, but Robert Stevenson, his ADP is about to shoot up because he absolutely has the opportunity here. And we look at his ADP right now, it's 331 because people were trying to figure out where he was going to go. And that puts him behind close. Like he was going behind Jason Adam, and that's going to jump. But it's kind of the same situation. Like Hunter Harvey would be the next reliever, and that's 40 picks up. You could potentially see him making that jump towards the top 100 overall here over the last month with Stevenson.
Yeah, I wonder if the first initial jump is going to be before he gets to actual spring training and he gets news is if he just takes over like Brian Abreu's spot in the ADP, which was 268. So I think he'll still be a fairly affordable guy here for the next little bit.
We are talking about a pitcher who has 3 offerings with at least a 40% whiff rate. 3.
Yeah.
The cutter, the slider, and the splitter. It's where Stevenson would fall into trouble is when he falls behind in accounts and has to use 3-0 fastballs if he doesn't locate them well. Oops, because he did. The league did hit 300 off his fastball with a 287 expected. Slugging was it was there, and those are his overall numbers and not just his Tampa Bay numbers. But again, a reliever with 3 pitches with a 40% or greater whiff rate. Hello.
Yeah, I think there is a really, really good chance he is the guy in LA. If I'm drafting right now, I'm making sure if I take one, I take both. I'm just going to grab both and not risk, missing out on the stays in Los Angeles for the Angels. So, today's topic that we're going to discuss, we're going to stay on the pitching side of things today. I was going to do some hitting things, but Paul and I are going through a lot of the hitters and a lot of the guys that I was going to talk about. We just talked about it. So I decided we'll stay on the pitching side of things for right now, while Paul and I work through the hitter side of things. And we're going to talk about some pitchers who are going after pick 300 since Christmas. Let's start with Louis Varland, who is going pick 304 right now, a min of 254 and a max of 382. Varland is a guy that everyone seems to be still a little excited about. I don't know particularly why. Tell me why you might be excited about Louis Varland, or are you?
I would like Louis Varland if Minnesota did not put him in the rotation. That's where I am with Louis Varland. So I'm looking at, we talked a little bit last week where we said the central divisions are rather flat. Like no team is truly standing out from the others as we are going to dominate this division. And so when I see a division like that, and you can see some close games, some middle games, like I want to look for the next Colin Poche, the next Ian Jabot, the next Mike Bowman. These are guys that won 9+ games in middle relief with good overall numbers because they took advantage of the opportunity, the way the way pitching management is played out. I feel that Varland has the skill set to be one of those guys this year if he can be put into the bullpen. We saw what he did last year when he came back in September and was throwing with more velocity. Like everything he just had more stuff out of the bullpen than he did as a starting pitcher. And so to me, that's where my interest, like if the Minnesota front office came out right now and said Louis Varland's going to be our swing man, we will spot him sometimes in the rotation, but other than that, he is going to be a middle to late relief weapon for us. I'd be very in. I mean, the quote that I saw when I was looking at this, they said that had to see the Twins don't want to make a call on him, and this is both from Baldelli and Derek Falvey. They're glad that he has the experience of doing the starting and relieving at the high level, but it didn't affect their perspective. But it did affect their perspective to see Varland up to 100 miles an hour with a fastball and a cutter that gave hitters fit out of the bullpen. I think he has the ability to be an elite reliever, Baldelli says. I don't want to make any bold statements. I'll talk to him soon. What he showed out of the pen was special. It's like the language is pointing in that direction where, hey, we're not going to put you in the rotation because we saw what he does in rotation. He gives up a lot of home runs. But if he could come in and throw water out of the bullpen, I'm more excited about that. So right now I look at and say the uncertainty, because again, last year we saw so many, some good relievers put up some positive fantasy value last year with the wins, with the strikeouts, with the ratios. And I'm looking for the next guy because that's not a year-to-year stickiness thing. Like there's no way Poche's winning 12 games again in 60 innings. It's just not going to happen. But somebody else could do it. And Varland certainly has the tools that he's shown at a very small sample size, but he has shown the stuff. And Minnesota is a team that plays, that should be very competitive in that division. It hasn't differentiated themselves, but I like a lot of the indicators that I'm seeing from Varland right now.
Yeah. I get that. I don't draft those kind of guys, though. I mean, outside of like AL only leagues, like I pick those guys up when I see their skills start to show in the majors and we kind of know what their role is. I think right now people are drafting Louis Varland as a potential, back end of the rotation starter for Minnesota. And I don't want Louis, like, I get like there's really, really good stuff, but man, that guy has a massive home run problem. Just a massive home run problem.
How about this scenario? So from a strategy perspective, so right now he's just inside the 300. So, that's going to put him, we're talking like 20th round type of thing. So let's say you have your let's say you have 5 starters and 2 relievers already drafted, and you're looking for either your 6th starter, your 6th, or your 3rd reliever. You've already said that there are better starting options. So let's say, would you rather take a flyer on Varland here as your 3rd reliever and see how that situation plays out? Or would you rather take a spec on a setup guy that could become the closer? So I think Stevenson would be gone, but so Stevenson would be a bad comp. But like if you are looking at like maybe Colin Halderman in Pittsburgh, you have Bednar, and like, I want to take this. I want to take a spec. Maybe this is the year Bednar gets traded. Something like that. You're looking to do that. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I'd much rather do that, especially if there's some ambiguity to like who the guy is as the closer in a certain spot. Just kind of looking down. I mean, obviously, like I said, Robert Stevenson, he's in the 300s right now. He won't be for very long. Give me Will Smith, in Kansas City as the potential closer.
Can't argue that. I mean, last year I was like, why is Will Smith getting and Will Smith came in and took that save. So it's like, I'm not arguing. I can't argue Will Smith.
Yeah, like give me Gregory Santos. Give me Aroldis Chapman. Obviously, if he signed back with Texas, he might shoot up a little bit. Give me a guy like AJ Puck. Like, I mean, and then we go to starters. Pretty much all the starters, I think, minus maybe one guy that we're going to talk about today, I will take over Louis Varland. Just because, one, I feel a lot more confident about their role. And two, like, probably doesn't have a massive homer problem. Like, the problem with Louis Varland is if he does start the year in rotation, how long is he going to be there? How much damage is he going to do to you in the meantime? Or if he does get shifted to the bullpen, like, could he be a dynamite multi-inning reliever? Absolutely. I definitely see that kind of in the range of outcomes. I also see the possibility that he's a 1-inning guy. Like when he came back from the minor leagues at the end of the season, he had 1, 2, 3, 4 outings of more than an inning, but he also had 3 outings of an inning. Maybe he's not going to be a 4-inning or a 3-inning guy that comes in and can rack up some strikeouts for you.
Yeah.
Maybe he's just
I
a
mean,
guy
I would
that comes in
say,
and gets you too.
and I agree with the critiques with it. For me, it's the uncertainty is helping things right now. If they say you're in the bullpen, you probably see his ADP come down because, as you said earlier, people are drafting Varland as that starting pitcher. But if that ADP continues to come down, then my interest continues to go up. That's my thing. I don't want him as a starter, as you mentioned. The homers are a problem. Multiple home runs in 6 of his games. 6 games he had multiple home runs allowed. 4 of which, there was the 3 home run outing this first game of the season. Then he had a 2 against the Cubs, a 2 against the Jays, a 2 against the Rays, a 2 against the Tigers, a 2 against the Mets. I mean, there's problems but in the bullpen, if that ADP starts coming down, my interest is going to go up. I'm just saying.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to a guy I am interested in because I enjoy being in pain and I don't learn from my mistakes. And that's Lance Lynn. Going to pick 304, same spot as Louis Varland, min of 257, max of 342. I just can't believe that Lance Lynn has completely lost it, and he's going to a fantastic pitching environment with a fantastic defense behind him, an organization that typically does really well with pitching, last year excluded in the St. Louis Cardinals. I think this is a perfect spot for him to rebound and kind of, maybe even finish his career off on a really, really good note. So where are you at on Lance Lynn? Are you going to take the pain like I am?
I'm really trying to keep this a PG-13 podcast. So I will just say this, dead to me. And I know that's probably a mortal fantasy sin, dead to me. Backstory, I had Lance Lynn last year in labor. For those who are new to the show or may have forgotten, I had in labor, you have to carry guys all year. I carried Lance Lynn all year until the end. Week 23, I finally drop him after he gets bombed by the Marlins. And then he comes out and has 3 good starts for the Dodgers. And I nearly lost my lead at the end to Jesse Roach. Nearly did. If I had sat on Lynn for 3 more weeks, then would have been easy. Would have absolutely been easy. It is. But I disagree with you that there's something left. Let's not forget, this was a guy, his pitching run value was a 1. Like, he was in the first percentile, not the good first, the bad first percentile. His fastball also in the first percentile. His breaking ball value 4. His off speed 38. So, like, if he can come out and throw a bunch of changeups, to me, like, this is the bigger version of James Shields at the end of his career. This is not going to go well. I want absolutely nothing to do with Lance Lynn. If he's going to have volume, it's going to be even worse. I'm glad he went to the National League because I don't play in National League only, and I don't consider a mixed league viable pitching material. End of story.
Wow. Okay. I mean, that is there's nothing in the profile, honestly. There's not much in the profile that tells me that he can turn around.
What's up with the Cardinals signing all these old farts this winter, by the way?
To be honest,
Kyle Gibson, Kittredge, Lance Lynn, Matt Carpenter. It's like they're red, so maybe their corporate sponsor is going to be AARP, and I say that as a card-carrying AARP member. But maybe they are. Maybe they are. And see, I'm not even kidding. See right here on camera, guys. AARP. It's red and white, Cardinals colors. It's all here. So that's why I'm like, I don't understand. They're just signing all these older guys to a roster that already has some older guys. Yeah.
Well, I think part of it is that they've got a number of prospects in AA and AAA to start the year that could be up, halfway through the season. And so they didn't want long-term commitments to guys.
Fair enough.
Because they've got reinforcements coming. That being said, as far as Lance Lynn goes, this is, I'm going to say it. I'm biased. Like, I love Lance Lynn, and I always have. Because there isn't, even in that 4-game stretch that you're kind of referencing at the end of the season last year, where you go, okay, here's some stuff like, 3.38 ERA, xFIP of 5.79, walks per 9 of 4, homer per 9 of 1.5. Like, the strikeout,
the win, you got those stupid wins, and that's where I needed wins. We're such a tight category. And Lynn got those wins at the end. Like, I had to sweat out AL labor to the final day of the season. I don't want to do that again.
You know what? As I start to work through my pitching projections, hopefully next week, My guess is I'm going to be a lot more realistic about what Lance Lynn could be. And, the velocity is just not the same. He's, does not have the same movement on his pitches. He's probably someone you should avoid. I won't, because I'm stupid and I continue to just go back to the well. At least this year, like, he's not in a position where you have to hold on to him. So
I will say this in his one thing that he does. This is probably what kept his ERA below 6 last year. He doesn't surrender a lot of stolen bases. I'm looking at there was 7 stolen bases with him on the mound. He pitched 183.2 innings, and let's not forget a lot of that was with the White Sox with Grandal, who is a terrible thrower. He was. When I looked over the last 2 years, Grandal was the absolute worst for that out of 64 catchers. So the fact that Lynn does not allow that many stolen bases is probably what protected that ERA from being below 6. I mean, it was 5.73 by season's end, and Lord knows he had traffic on the bases with that, but there wasn't a lot of stolen bases allowed there. So maybe that's a saving grace for him. I got to say one thing positive about the guy, so that'll be it. I'll say that. But then again, maybe everybody was just standing around waiting for the 3-run home runs. They gave up 44 of those.
I still would take Lance Lynn over Louis Varland, but I can understand why most people wouldn't. Let's go to the next guy. Jameson Taillon, pick 309, min of 275, a max of 351. Any interest in Jameson Taillon?
Only thing I can say about him is he doesn't walk. He doesn't get himself in trouble with walks. And that's about the only positive thing I can say about him. It's one of these, once your lasting memory of somebody when you watch him, and I was at a live game in Anaheim watching him pitch against the Angels, and it did not go well for Jameson Taillon. Early on it did, but then the second time through, boom, boom. I got to see Trout and Ohtani home run in the same game. So homer in the same game. So I was like, yay, with that. And no, he doesn't. No, this is not a pitcher I want to add to my profile if I have to. It's because I've insulated my numbers well enough to take a chance. But when I look at this profile, I'm not turning my nose up as much as I do with Lance Lynn, but this isn't great. But there are names when I look at like going where Taillon's going, I can just like rattle off a few names I'd rather take. Give me John Gray over him. Give me a guy we're going to talk about in a minute over him. Give me Tyler Wells. Give me Logan Allen. Give me, Rangers. I mean, there's a number. I'm looking down the list saying I like a lot of these guys better than what I've seen out of Taillon.
Yeah, the thing with Taillon is like prior to his kind of, most recent work, he's always one of those guys where like, hey, you could count on him to just be good. Like, he may not be healthy and may not be on the mound, but when he is, he's a very, very good pitcher with really good skills. The skills are still there, but he's had issues with command, which has led to just blow up outings. You look at like what he did in his 6 starts right before the end of the season, and it's literally like, 5 2/3, 5 earned runs, 6 scoreless, 5 innings, giving up 3 earned runs, including 2 home runs, 6 scoreless. Like, 6 earned runs give up, or 6 innings give up 2 earned runs, 4 scoreless. Like, he has the ability to shut guys down, but it's so start to start dependent on whether or not he's got feels for certain pitches that I don't know that I want to trust him, week in and week out. I have taken
matchup. I would say it's almost matchup dependent, but then you look at the September 8th start, 6 innings, a shutout, 1 hitter with 9 strikeouts against the Diamondbacks. But then there's other outings. You're like, what the? Like, he gets bombed by Cincinnati, gets bombed to Colorado. Yeah, we get that. Gets bombed by the Royals, gets bombed by the Tigers. How do you get bombed by the Tigers?
Yeah. I just think he's one of those guys that is better for streaming than he is for rostering, especially in your 12-teamers. But in your 15-teamers, like, I've taken the gamble a couple times. I've kind of regretted it. Unless he drops in a draft, maybe I'm not as high on some of these guys we're talking about today as I thought we were going to be.
I'm counting 12 starts, 12 of 29 where he allowed 4 more earned runs.
Yeah. Let's talk about Luis Severino. He signed a deal to go to the Mets. He was atrocious last year, just really, really bad. Struggled with health. He struggled with health for a number of years now. Going to a new location, while it's still New York, different spot, much better park. Any interest in Luis Severino?
Not really. Not at this price. I mean, if he's going, we've talked about 4 guys so far: Varland, Lynn, Taillon, and Severino. And my interest is Varland, and I don't want the other 3 guys. That's kind of my interest here. It's like you got to show me something before I'm going to be back in on him. And if somebody else wants to take a pick this high, if I mention a bunch of names I like behind Taillon and Severino is right there on the ADP chart with them, give me all of the other guys before I get to get the Severino. And if I miss out on the goodness, then I missed out on it. But I'd rather take my chances with somebody else who's shown some health, shown some other past success, than somebody who has been a question mark here. Especially coming off of last year where the numbers were just, my God, the home runs. You get back to Varland. I mean, we took 15 home runs and a 353 average off that fastball last year. Yikes.
Yeah, Severino's another one of these guys that I just have a soft spot for because I was a big Severino guy when he was coming up to the majors. And he was fantastic when he was healthy. I mean, I still believe that the talent is in there for Severino to be a top 30 starting pitcher, which is kind of what you're looking for. You're either at this point in the draft, you're either looking for guys who can just stabilize what you've already built or a guy who can pop. And I think Severino is still a guy who can pop, throws 96, still. The problem is the health and the command, right? When he is on the mound, the command was a huge issue for him last season. 2.32 homers per 9. Really, really struggled with that fastball command, even at 96. I think this is a really good spot for him because it is a much better park than he was dealing with. We know that there was a lot of turmoil in New York where he wanted to continue pitching at times, and the Yankees would shut him down and put him on the IL. I wonder if just a change of scenery is something that Luis Severino needs to get going. And I think the nice thing about drafting a guy like Luis Severino is I think you're going to know pretty quickly whether or not he's back to being an effective pitcher. He's not one of these guys you're going to have to hold on to for a month to see. Like, you can take 2 starts on your bench and kind of look and go, okay, is Luis Severino got good command or does he not? If he doesn't, drop him, move on to the next guy, as opposed to, maybe a guy like Louis Varland, where you're kind of hoping and waiting and seeing what the role is going to be, how they're going to use him, and a month later you're having to drop him still too. So
I would say if you are the type of fantasy manager that likes to use your 6th spot as a streaming spot, this is an option. But that's honestly as high as I'd be willing to take them. Is as a 6 right now, is as my pitcher 6. But I'm taking like 3 other starters on my bench that I could figure out who's got the best matchups this week. That's the guy I'm going with. This isn't the old draft him, set it and forget it type of situation, but streaming option, I could see it.
All right, let's move on over to Chase Silseth, who was pretty interesting before his injury that made him lose quite a bit of time last year.
Teammate throwing a ball off his head doesn't help.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just unfortunate for him. As far as we know, he's going to be entering the season healthy and ready to go. Any interest in Chase Silseth?
I do have interest in Silseth if he can fix himself. And when I looked under the hood with him, it really comes down to some of the same things we were talking about with Severino. When Silseth falls behind the count, he is extremely hittable. I broke down the numbers and looked at it. When the batters are ahead in the count, they hit 357. Their triple slash line was 357, 561, 691 off of Silseth when they were ahead. Now, when with even count, that dropped down to 246, 259, 474. And then with pitcher ahead, that dropped down to 146 batting average against, 246 slugging percentage. So it's like he's got the stuff, but he's got to work ahead. Like Silseth does not have the type of stuff where he can continue to work behind in the account. He's got to get up early, get up in the count early so he can use his other stuff. But there's a lot to like here if he can get out of his own way. He's got a ground ball tilt, but if he can't hit his spots, those ground balls get out of the park. And he's still young. look at him and I want to say, go look at how Alex Cobb and Kevin Gossman turned their careers around and decided not to throw as many fastballs, get ahead early, and then expand the strike zone with their other stuff. I believe that Silseth has kind of an Alex Cobb-like profile of success if everything goes right with that. So this is what I was referring to earlier. It's like Silseth is somebody that I would take over Lynn, Taillon, and Severino just on spec right now.
Yeah, I don't know that I would. Well, he does have, 4 or 5 pitches that are usable. Nothing is overpowering. Nothing is like and that isn't necessarily a bad thing. Like, I think you can make that work if you have really, really good control and command, which Silseth does not have. And so I just feel like he is like a perpetual number 5 starter that gets him down to the minors. I think he's going to start the year in the rotation because the Angels are pretty weak in that rotation unless they go out and add like a Blake Sneller or a Jordan Montgomery, which I don't expect them to do at this point. I just don't see this ending well, especially in that division, which is really, really loaded up top. And you're going to have to face the Astros and the Rangers and the Mariners over and over and over again. I don't know. I've never been a Chase Silseth guy. I just don't think he's got the kind of stuff mixed with command to make it work. And yeah, I'm not a believer in his profile. Wish him luck. I'm glad he's healthy coming back from that injury, but ultimately I think I'd rather have the next guy on the list, who is another one of these guys who I continue to go back to the well on year after year. And I feel this year that Ranger Suarez is really, really underrated. I don't understand exactly why he's going pick 342. Any interest in Ranger Suarez?
Yes, I do. I agree with your statement on him. Yeah, this gets back to when we look at team context, this is a better situation for overall. But I do like Ranger Suarez and what his I guess we call it pitchability. Is the phrase I'm looking for. But yes, I do like Ranger Suarez more than some of these other names on the list as well with this. So Philadelphia is obviously a good situation for him to be in. And this to me is a nice price. I mean, 342 is putting him, rather late. I'm honestly surprised. Now, somebody went 226, more power to you. But he also went as late as 401, Suarez did in some of these drafts. So again, at this price, I would absolutely be interested in what Suarez brings to the table with the team that he's on.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised that he is as low as he is right now. I mean, he had the second highest strikeout of his career, strikeout rate of his career last year, second highest swing and strike rate, so back up. He may walk maybe a couple too many guys, but I think that's just a matter of not being willing to give guys the ability to go deep on him. And he doesn't. He's turned in his 3rd straight season where his homer per 9 is under 1. So like is he a guy that's going to deliver you a pristine whip? No, the whip is always bad. You need to be very, very careful about roster construction with a guy like Ranger Suarez because he, turned on 142 whip last year. I do think that he is a guy that has strikeout upside, that plays on a good team, that's going to win games, and that is a really just kind of effective glue guy, right? We were just talking about, when you're in this spot, you're looking for guys who could pop up and just magically become a top 30 pitcher, or you're looking for a glue guy. Ranger Suarez is never going to be a top 30 pitcher. What he is going to be is a glue guy for those of you in deeper leagues. And if you're listening to this episode, you're probably playing in a little bit of a deeper league, or you're just looking for those guys to pop. So if you're in a 10 or 12, don't worry about Ranger Suarez. He's a guy you stream off of the waiver wire. But in your 15th, I think Ranger Suarez is a pretty nice glue guy that I like to draft.
So I'm going to bring up a point about him because it kind of dovetails into the next guy we're going to talk about. So part of the rust on Suarez may be he only won 4 games. He had 22 starts and he only won 4 games. That said, he went 5 innings in 18 of his 22 outings. Like, it was there. Some of it may have been of his own doing, but he only had a decision in 10 of his 22, and he only won 4 of those 22 for a good club. Not all of that's in his control, but the thought may be, okay, maybe he doesn't go deep enough in the games. But he was there. He was qualifying for wins in that. But some of those times they left him out there and said, you're pitching. Go ahead. I'm looking at some 5 innings, 5 earned runs starts against the Diamondbacks and the Nationals. But I'm going to transition right over to the next guy. But this comes into play with Logan Allen with Cleveland. Because Logan Allen with Cleveland early on, this is something he was struggling with. Yeah, but he ended up with 7 wins in 24 starts. But Logan Allen early on was getting into 90 pitches in the 4th inning. That's what was struggling. He could not put guys away. And that's what became problematic with him, which as it got deeper, because the crazy thing, looking back at his game log, his first outing, 6 innings, 1 run, 8 strikeouts against Miami. Then he did something similar against Boston, but then he was struggling to the pitch count was just problematic. I remember looking at a game in the middle of the summer against the Royals, 3 2/3, and he went 80-something pitches in that game, in 3 2/3. So he was having trouble putting guys away, and it got a little better as the season went on. But this was 5-6 innings. But Cleveland plays so many of those close games, they still end up getting 7 wins out of 24. But you look at everything else, you're like, how did he do this type of situation with Logan Allen? And I like the pitcher. We've often talked on this podcast about how Cleveland is just, they continue to find guys and do things and make the best of them. So you have to give him that credibility with that. But my concern with Logan Allen is, can he get deeper into games on a more consistent basis this year? And maybe that's why Logan Allen's ADP is down where it is compared to some of these other also rans. Logan Allen has some upside. But even though he has upside, he's going 30 picks after some of those other guys. I said, I don't want him on my roster.
Yeah, I have not been a Logan Allen backer since him kind of coming up and making his debut. And even before that, I don't think he's necessarily a guy with overpowering stuff, but what I will say is, he is the kind of guy that I normally like, right? Like, he's got multiple pitches. He's got really good command. He's left-handed in an organization that has no other left-handed starters at the moment. Mm-hmm. I think this is a really, really good price on Logan Allen. I wonder how much of this price is kind of based on having so many other young guys in this rotation that are just kind of overshadowing him, with Tristan McKenzie and Tanner Bybee and Gavin Williams, that Logan Allen is just kind of being left out. But considering he's the only lefty in the rotation right now, and you have Shane Bieber, who may get traded, is an injury risk, Tristan McKenzie, who's always an injury risk, I think Logan Allen's in this rotation for the long haul. And while I don't necessarily think he has a huge ton of upside, I actually think the floor is a lot safer than maybe some of his counterparts in this rotation, like Gavin Williams and like Tristan McKenzie, who both have amazing upside, but their floors are really, really low, and I don't think they're being given that credit in the ADP right now. So I actually like Logan Allen.
By team context, as you were saying, Logan Allen is the 5th starting pitcher off the board. So Cleveland's ADPs over the last 30 days right now is Bybee at 105, Williams at 156, Bieber at 186. Then we got McKenzie at 245, and then we got Allen at 337.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind really any of those ADPs necessarily. I'm probably never going to draft Gavin Williams at that ADP or Bieber at that ADP. I'm less likely to draft Tristan McKenzie, but I think that price is actually fantastic considering he was going 150 at this time last year, and I don't think much has changed.
It all depends. When he came back last year, the velocity was concerning. It was not there. And to me, I need to see McKenzie in Goodyear, Arizona. I think that's where Cleveland trains. I need to see McKenzie back at 95 plus to be like, ooh, I'm back in, because he was working low 90s, and that's not going to cut it. I would say this though. If you take one of these late Cleveland guys, you mentioned that Allen is the only left-handed starter in the rotation. That's for now. Don't forget the name Joey Cantillo. Go look at Joey Cantillo. If you haven't, go watch YouTube videos. and see that. But Joey Cantillo, I sat down and watched some video of him last week, and I think I even texted you, and Paul, I'm like, where does Cleveland keep finding this stuff? It's like the changeup is so sexy. Not like rubbing cheese all over my body, Bobby Miller sexy, like Eno did at First Pitch Arizona. But man, watching that video about Joey Cantillo certainly elevated his profile for me, because when I was looking through, I was like, okay, we've got these names in Cleveland. Who's the next guy? Where's the next guy come up? It won't be Xavier Curry. I've seen that. That's not going to play out. Espino can't stay healthy. Let me look at this Joey Cantillo guy. Went in, looked at video, and I was like, okay, I've seen enough. I know what the risks are. You can look at the state. Then I go to the stats and say, oh, okay, I can see what the problem could be. But Joey Cantillo is a name that I would like listeners to tuck away if they haven't already heard of him.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you on Cantillo. As far as Allen goes, though, that changeup is actually really, really good. And if he can rely on it a little bit more and just do something to play off of it a little bit better, I think there is actually another step for a guy like Logan Allen. So probably, and if you had asked me prior to the start of this episode, is if he was going to be my favorite guy on the list, I think Logan Allen may be my favorite guy on the list. All right, moving on to the next guy. We're going to talk about another one of my favorites. I swear I didn't do this on purpose and just put guys that I've had long love affairs with. But it is Josiah Gray going to pick 386. Any interest in Josiah Gray, who we know has good stuff, but controlling it and commanding it is another issue.
Yeah, there's a couple of theories for me with Josiah Gray. I have been in on him and very interested on him since watching him early in his prospect days, listening to interviews with him. Like he knows what he wants to do. He knows what he should be doing. That said, his fastballs betray him. And there's a couple of things. So you look at his numbers, and all of his non-fastball pitches are fine. He throws he has his sinker as his preferred pitch, but his fastballs are where the league does damage on him. And then the other issue is that he really hasn't come up with an effective off-speed pitch. And so I saw more of this last year. He chooses to pitch around lefties to get to righties. So some of those, you look at the walks, you're like, oh man, this is bad. Well, some of those are strategic. Where like we flash back, that was some of the conversation with Blake Snell last year. It's like Blake Snell walks a lot of guys because he's strategically pitching around him. No, Blake Snell throws a lot of breaking balls, and if a disciplined hitters can stay off the breaking ball, they don't chase it, and then Blake Snell's like, fine, I'll just strike the next guy out. Gray doesn't have that type of attitude with things, but there were times when lefties where it looked like he was clearly, I'm just going to pitch away from these guys, and if they don't do it, I'll just move on to the righty. So I like the player. I just don't know how he overcomes this problem. I don't know how Gray can overcome the lack of a fastball. I mean, Marcus Stroman has certainly done it to a point, but maybe it comes with Gray. Like you look at his baseball savant, he's got 6 pitches he's trying. Maybe narrow that down. Use the old Jeff Zimmerman theory. Are you Darvish? No? Then stop throwing 6 pitches. Narrow things down. So I want to see what steps he takes, but there's certainly risk in the profile at this price. This is reserve round type of thing. Gray has the potential to, using your language earlier, who can jump. So he's got the potential to do it, but he also has a floor that you've got to be willing to accept, that he walks a lot of guys, even if they are strategic, and he allows home runs. And so there are some risk at play there.
Yeah, man, he's just one of those guys that I feel like is like a development, not adding a pitch, obviously, because like you said, he's got 6 pitches, but development of a pitch away from like figuring things out. If he can figure something out against lefties, like I just see the talent in the arm, and maybe I'm just blinded by that because at this point we've had a large enough sample size with Josiah Gray to know kind of what he is. The guys
Sorry, did I say 6? I meant 7 pitches. That's what he has. 7.
He does have 7, actually. No, he only throws one of them like 1% of the time. So I'd be interested to see him throw that changeup a little bit more, though, because it actually isn't it doesn't look like a bad changeup, but maybe it's one of those things where he just has no trust in it.
Or morph it into a splitter. I mean, find
Find
It's tough
something.
because I mean, changeup's a field pitch, and I don't know how large his hands are, but splitter. If you don't have large hands, it's tough to throw. It's tough to get the comfort level with the splitter type of situation. But it would be nice for him to have a better approach against lefties than just I'm going to pitch around him, because it's when you look at I was looking at the splits last year against lefties. You know, the league hit 251. They are on base 345, and he allowed 22 of his home runs against lefties.
To his like credit and the kind of the plus side on him, unlike some of these other guys that we've talked about, I think you're gonna get 160 innings from Josiah Gray. Like, are you gonna get that from injury prone guys like Severino and Taillon, or guys whose roles may not be as stable like Varland and Silseth? And maybe even Logan Allen. I don't know that you are. I know that you're going to get 160 innings from Josiah Gray. I mean, obviously injuries can happen to anybody, but ultimately, like, Washington doesn't have the kind of depth in the rotation to not let Josiah Gray go out there every fifth day. So in your deeper formats, in your DCs, he makes a lot of sense because you're going to have him available off your bench to pitch. I just don't know that we have not yet seen not anything from him at this point to think that much is going to change in terms of the profile. So while I'm totally fine taking him into DC, I'm probably going to go elsewhere in a lot of other formats.
And the only issue I have is he may give you 160, 170 innings, Graywood, but how many of those innings are going to be valuable from Josiah Gray? Because they're again, the potential with the walks and the homers, the potential for meltdown is there. But he also strikes out, and maybe if he consolidated that repertoire, and in fact, if something with the off speed, that's where, if like you look, I'd be even more back in if he could do this. But ADP wise, like, I love the pitcher, but when I look at this, like, he's the fourth or fifth guy of all the guys that we've talked about today that I would want if I'm doing my own personal rankings of the guys we've talked about. We've said Varland, we've said Silseth, we've said Allen. The next guy we're going to talk about, I like all four of those guys better than I like Josiah Gray for this coming season.
I will say that he did a better job at preventing the home run ball in the second half. He only had one multi-homer game given up, gave up a total of 8 home runs in 58 innings. He did walk 5 per 9, though, during that time. So he was just saying, like, I'm not going to let you hit it all because I'm not going to go near the zone, which is a problem. All right. Let's finish out with Bryce Elder. I'm a little surprised Bryce Elder is going as low as he is, considering kind of stuff that he's done at the major league level. It just feels like no one believes in Bryce Elder. It sounds like you believe in him more than Josiah Gray, but how much do you believe in him?
That's the thing. When you look at it, because you try to figure out. So when I'm looking at, okay, wow, he's really down here. So yes, he doesn't have the electric stuff that everybody else has. And I've looked at looking at Stuff Plus model. We're talking the 80 Stuff Plus. That's where to me, this is where it gets to. It's like 80 Stuff Plus, 99 location plus, and 95 pitching plus. But like the latter two of those numbers, to me, Elder's got that dog in him. And I don't know how else to kind of say it, but he is like, if Bryce Elder wasn't on Atlanta, my interest would be less. But he is on Atlanta. He is on a team that can provide a lot of runs. He is on a team that plays good defense. And so I've seen him. I saw him pitch live last year when I was at a game in Atlanta. And he just has that dog. He's got the pitch ability. Sometimes there are just guys that come out and fill up the strike zone and trust the defense behind them to make the plays and do all that. And it's exactly what Bryce Elder did last year. And so there were times where he was out over his skis, I would say, at one point, and then some of that regression came back to bite him. But that's going to happen when you're not pitching with, you have 80 plus stuff. That's going to happen. But he still ended up winning 12 of his games. The ERA was up on the high. So it's like, at this price, yes, keep me in for Bryce Elder. I know what the downside could be, and he has to execute things very well for him to be successful. If he doesn't, it could get bad in a hurry. But on the team context, he's on a good team. They're going to give him that chance to do that. And so, yes, at this price, absolutely. And that's why I like him more. I mean, he and Josiah Gray are right there together by ADP. But even if they were around apart, I would still prefer Elder just because that team context if I'm taking a shot this late in the draft on somebody who could pop again, that would be Elder.
Yeah, I understand why is it pick 387? Elder is, and I'm trying to find. I just drafted him in a draft, so I'm just trying to figure out exactly where it was. Okay, so I got him at pick. That must be
166. Oh, kidding.
I think it was like 450. Is that right? Am I doing my math?
Well,
right?
he's gone as late as 469.
Yeah. So, yeah, I got him at 452 in a draft champions that I just did with a bunch of people in the industry. I just saw people jumping in, saying a bunch of people like Bubba and Ryan Bloomfield and Curlin, Frank Amarante and Matt Williams and John Fish and Joe Rico, and Zach Waxman all jumping into the same DC. I was like, oh, that sounds like a fun group. And he just kept dropping and dropping and dropping. And I think a mistake that a lot of drafters make is they go, oh, I'm not going to touch this guy ever. And at some point, he has value. Like at 452, we're talking about would not be drafted at in a regular 15-team fab league. He's going to be in the rotation. And like you mentioned, this is a really good team that could win a lot of games. Maybe even rival the Dodgers, the best team in baseball, and a good defense, in the middle up the middle and in the infield, where that's where Bryce Elder lives. He gets a ton of ground balls. Yes, he allows a ton of contact that sometimes can come back to bite him, but ultimately, he is just kind of an effective, guy who can get out of innings quickly because he allows so many ground balls. I don't know that there's a ton of upside here necessarily because I don't think he's ever going to be a massive strikeout guy, but could he be a sneaky source of wins, and a ratio stabilizer? Absolutely. And pick 452, I'm taking that all day. Even closer to his ADP of 387, that isn't bad. That's totally fine at that spot, but especially in drafts where he's going to fall outside of top 400, I think Bryce Elder is kind of a steal. And this is a guy that I was screaming from the rooftops on about as a sell high candidate last year. And everybody knew it, right? I was trying to sell him in some leagues where I had him, and nobody was buying. But ultimately, I just think he is like a version of Miles Mikolas when Miles Mikolas has been good, right? Where, gives up a lot of contact, yes, but a lot of it's on the ground, and that defense behind it's going to eat up a lot of it. So, yeah, I got no problem with.
Yeah, I was trying to look for. I'm sorting through a pack of 87 Topps cards here, and I was trying to look for an example of hey, because it's driving me nuts. There's a particular, there's a pitching profile here of a fifth starter that just goes out there, gives you the innings, fills up the strike zone, and that's what it is. And this isn't a profile that I particularly love or want to chase, but I don't have to chase it. If you you said you took 450 something, who cares? I mean, this is free, and if you're looking for somebody that could give you, a DC, obviously you can't cut bait, but if we're talking about anything else, this is something you can have on your bench. You want to cut him, you can cut him. But like I said, he's got pitchability, and he's on a good team. If he was pitching for Detroit, I'm out. If he's pitching for Kansas City, I'm out. A different context, no, thank you. But you couldn't ask for a better situation for a guy to take a chance on than Elder here.
Yeah, I just don't see a world in which you're not just getting a ton of innings from a guy who. Is his ERA going to be, 3.3? Probably not. You're probably living in the 3.75 area. He was 3.81 last year. But again, in your deeper formats, in your 15-team leagues, he makes a lot of sense as a kind of a back end ratio stabilizer, especially if you have guys at the top end that maybe have some really good upside, but are in situations that may not bear a lot of fruit in terms of wins, right? Elder, you can pretty much pencil in 12 or 13 wins because he's going to pitch a bunch of innings on one of the best teams in baseball. And he's not going to, overly hurt you because he put so many balls on the ground in front of that good defense. So
if he does his part, I mean, I'm looking at Atlanta's ADP by pitching, and Strider is, obviously has gone as high as 3. No thanks. But and then you got Max Fried, then we who has his own injury concerns. Then we have Chris Sale, who has his own injury concerns. We have Charlie Morton, who's had some issues. Then we have Bryce Elder, but then we have AJ Smith, Shawver. Whatever they're going to do with Reynaldo Lopez, I still can't believe they're entertaining him for the rotation.
I don't think they are anymore. I mean, maybe he is a guy who can transition to the rotation once one of these other guys gets hurt.
Yeah.
But I don't think that
I would be all. I mean, his ADP is currently 453. I would be all over that in a DC. I love Reynaldo Lopez, the reliever on this team. I love him in that particular situation. I do not want him as a starting pitcher. I don't.
I don't. If he's a starter, I don't want anything to do with him. If he's a reliever, I want everything to do with him. It's just the role is so important for Reynaldo Lopez. But as far as Elder goes, I just think he is a really good glue guy. At the back end of your rotation. I just don't. I understand that one of the reasons why he drops is because people are looking for upside guys that are going to pop. And I don't think Elder's that guy, but I do think that if you're in a DC, if you're in even a 15-team just fab league, that guy at the end of your bench is not a bad guy to have.
Yeah, it's driving me nuts. I can't think of the glue profile. He's not. I'm trying to think. Somebody used to pitch who was Fausto Carmona, and then his name became Roberto Hernandez. That type. He's not like that. But again, Elder just does his thing. And maybe the name I keep coming to mind, like Rick Helling. Rick Helling used to be that guy, but then Rick Helling became Rick Schelling because he lost his ability to be that guy. So again, at this pick, unless you're in a DC, you can, at this price rather, you can take Elder, and if he stinks, you cut bait.
Yep. All right, that's going to wrap us up for this episode. Jason, remind everybody to keep on social media and plug anything you got going on.
So on Threads, on Blue Sky at Jason Collette, we won't be recording next week because PitchCon's going on, right? I don't know about. Yeah, we have Nick Pollock and the folks at Pitcher List are hosting PitchCon. I have a session. I am the last session of the entire thing before they start giving away everything. I am the panelist. No, I'm not the panelist. I'm the host, and I get to talk to Sarah Langs and Meg Rowley about 2024 hot takes. I don't know what those hot takes are going to be yet, but I get the honor of talking to those two about hot takes, and I know people are coming to listen to them and not me. So I'm going to try to do not a lot of talking and allow those two, to impart their wisdom on PitchCon. Looking forward to it. I was already trying to align, okay, what does my work schedule look like against what sessions am I going to be able to listen to? The agenda looks phenomenal. I was going through it yesterday. I'm excited to see everything on it. And I know all the proceeds are going to a specific ALS foundation. And if you haven't gone to PitchCon before, it's free. It is, you donate what you feel you're getting out of it. And there are different prizes if you make donations, and I forgot what some of the prizes are that are out there, but they talk about it. But it's a great time. It started up during COVID, and it's actually gotten better since we didn't have those restrictions. It continues to grow every year, and I'm excited to be a part of it again.
Yep, I'm going to be on PitchCon as well. I think I got to double check, but I think I'm actually on Sunday. I'm
8 p.m. Eastern on Sunday.
I can't remember exactly if I'm Saturday or Sunday. My wife's going to be on it as well at some point. I'm talking about the second half performances. So we're going to talk about some players who either performed well or did not perform well in the second half, and how we feel like those are going to carry on or not carry on into 2024. Dan Strafford is going to be hosting and leading that panel, and Lucien Kish is going to be on it as well with me. And I have never met him before, so I'm looking forward to meeting someone new, talking some baseball. I offered to give away a Justin Mason bathing suit. So
that's going to be massive demand.
Britton Allen got new. Britton Allen got one last year and has it hanging up in his office where he records. So It is a very popular rating. So I don't know if Nick's going to put it on there again this year, but I thought I'd offer. So, as far as other stuff I got going on, you can reach me at Justin Mason FWFB, writing at Fangraphs and Fantasy Pros this season once again. And I'm going to have a ton of articles coming out over the next week on both. So if you like my written content, go check that out over there. For Jason, myself, thank you for listening. Have a fantastic baseball off season.
Thanks, guys.